Okay, I want to bring you guys along with me on this one. It's a 2011 BMW. We are going to come in with our Autologic Assist and we are going to let it determine the vehicle. Key is on right now. Identifies it. It's an M52. Hit continue. Sorry about the glare on the screen. I'll try to readjust here so we don't have to see it. Okay, we're in. Drive. Now the complaint with this car is that on a cold start there it runs terribly rough, and we're setting a check engine light on right away. So if we come into DME and we go to fault codes, we're setting 4 codes in here for Valvetronic: eccentric shaft sensor, guide sensor, sorry guys, Valvetronic eccentric shaft sensor reference, the guide sensor, and 2 other in there for reference. Okay, so what are those codes? What are they actually about? And how long ago did they actually happen? We hit the little arrow on the side over there and we can see when it first came in there, our first fault entry and our second fault entry right now. This is the last fault entry right here. Hi. This is our last fault entry. Sorry guys. Apparently the owner of the car wanted to see that I was actually working on it. So that'll be your generic fault code there, right there, the P1006 VVT guiding sensor parity error, if you can even find that. And from there we're going to exit back out, and we're going to come back out here, and we're going to our diagnostic requests. Diagnostic requests is going to let us see some data, and we look at Valvetronic there. Specified angle is 0, actual angle is 230. Alright, well that already tells me where we're at. 230 means that we're at maximum valve lift. We should not be at maximum valve lift, which means that it's most likely, if this thing was at maximum valve lift, this vehicle may not even start. But it is starting, and it is running a little poorly in the beginning, but it does actually go to that maximum valve lift. It'll actually command it anyway, even though the sensor doesn't show it there, and it'll bring it up to maximum valve lift, and this car will run. So 230 degrees. We know that that's not going to be legitimate. Let's go back out for a second, and we're going to attempt something here. Let's see, we go back in. We're in diagnostic requests. We don't want to be there. We want to go into component activations, I believe. Nope, not there. Service functions and learning Valvetronic limit positions. All right. At every repair on the vehicle, the valve timing gear stops at the adjustment mechanism must be relearned. The minimum and maximum valve lift. During the procedure, the eccentric shaft is slowly turned in the minimum lift direction and until mechanical resistance is felt, and then it does it the opposite way around for maximum valve lift. Alright, so switch off the ignition. Wait until the main relay is dropped out. I'm going to tell you now, take the key out of the ignition. It generally lets them go in there. Some of these things will stay awake even for more than 15 seconds. And then we're going to come in here, put our key back in, hit the key on, hit OK, and we're going to hit OK. It wants to see 0 RPM, so this is done. Key on, engine off. It says limit positions were successfully learned. Let's hit end. And we're going to go back out of that and go back into our fault codes. We're going to clear and reread, and right away we reset 2 codes in there, the guide sensor and a reference. So we're going to go back one more. We're going to do service functions again one more time, learn the Valvetronic, hit next, turn the key off, take the key out, and we'll wait. What we're doing here is we're actually just waiting for it to stop remembering the old positions. We want it to learn new positions. Okay, 15 seconds is up. Put our key in. Hit the OK. Hit start. And it's up to 20 seconds max. It says it was learned. Go back out again. Back out one more time. Go back in there, look at our fault codes, and it has not changed. That is still an active code. So we do have a problem out there with the Valvetronic eccentric shaft sensor. So how do we actually test this? Eccentric shaft sensors are not what people would assume them to be. We think of a shaft sensor, we think of something like a throttle position sensor, something like a potentiometer of sorts. We are not looking at that. We are looking at something that is way more advanced, and the reason these things cost over $400 is because they are almost like their own little mini computer. So I was kind of set up for this already. I knew what I'd be looking for. So your eccentric shaft sensor, I can't get the words out. The sensor, I'm going to call it the sensor from now on. We know what it is. This is where our sensor is located. It comes in behind underneath the valve cover here and then sits up behind the timing chain. So over here, I've already got a scope pattern on there for the 4 wires that I've already looked at. One of these wires that's on here is going to be a clock line. A clock line is basically there to start synchronization. This is a stored waveform. Our blue line right there is going to be our clock line. That is going to tell it when to start initiating things, when to start looking at things, when to start talking. What you're seeing there in the red and the yellow is not a position sensor. Or you could just time out on me. What you're looking at there is not a position sensor movement. You're not looking at any kind of movement there. What you're looking at is actually talking. That sensor right now is talking, not like a Hall effect, but it's actually talking back and forth to the DME, which is the engine control computer, and it has to be able to sit there and give the information of where we are. Now, we can't really interpret that. There's not much that you can do there to interpret that. But what you do want to make sure, though, is that you have at least 3 signals. We have our red, we have our yellow, we have our green, and we have our blue line, which is our clock line. Now, snap-on scope, not really great at showing it. One of the things you want to look for, though, on the clock right here is you want to make sure there's no ringing noises up here at the top. If you have a ringing noise at the top of that signal, or even down here at the bottom here where it comes down on the falling edge of the signal, if you had something like that, then you're looking at something that's a higher resistance, or I should say, I'm sorry, if it's a ringing, it's low resistance on the clock line. So what you would get is something that looks a little bit more staticky, and I can't seem to keep the focus on. There we go. So you would start to see something that looks a little bit more staticky on there on the edges, and that's no good. We don't want that. That would be an indicator that there's a problem with the DME or the wiring or the wiring going into the DME that's allowing it to sit there and build up more resistance. What these sensors get out here is going to be one 5-volt reference that's going to be coming in on this one in particular is going to be on the gray line, and then you're going to have your black line there is going to be your ground. We're tied into the other wires right now, which are going to be for the position sensing, and then we have a sensor ground and we have a static ground or a shielded ground also. So you'll have 2 grounds, one 5-volt reference. Your shielded ground, I believe, is going to be the brown on this side, right in the middle. Yes, it is. But really, that's really all you can actually do as far as testing. So you try to learn the Valvetronic limit positions. If it doesn't learn the limit positions, you just want to make sure that your shaft moves free. That will show in a different video. But the fact that this thing can actually bring itself up to idle and not be stuck in a no start condition means that the shaft can generally move. Generally. There's always some rules there that are a little bit different. But in a car like this, remember something. We have no intake manifold vacuum. Unlike other cars, they don't use intake manifold vacuum. If you were to go down there to that throttle body and pop it open and take a look inside there, that thing is open at all times. Unless there's a huge fault, something that has to do with the Valvetronic system, and at that point the throttle body will close. The Valvetronic is a variable valve lift. So when we have our engine sitting here at idle, the only time that we actually need to sit there and control the amount of air going into a cylinder, or the only time that we really need anything at all for what we can call vacuum or a slightly lower pressure, would be when we open up the valves. And depending upon how much we open up the valves, we have a minimum valve lift, we have a maximum valve lift, and that's what Valvetronic is adjusting. So as it wants to fill the cylinder with air, we're actually changing that valve lift and allowing that air to get into the cylinder. So just a normal pulling down of the crankshaft, bringing the air into the cylinder and opening the valve X amount, tells it that it's going to fill the cylinder with X amount of air. That's, in a nutshell, what this system is doing. This has variable valve timing and also has variable valve lift. So it's two different systems, but we'll have to get into that in a much longer discussion and a much longer video. But if you haven't seen it yet, I mean, get out there and get some training. You know, there's lots of great companies out there that do that. In this case here, even getting some of this information here, I was able to contact AutoLogic and said, hey guys, you know, wasn't able to pull up a diagram that actually made sense there, and I couldn't identify what clock line it was. So gave them a call and they knew right away, which was terrific. And again, you need to have something that's going to be basically an OE equivalent that's actually going to allow you to sit here and run these tests properly. I have tried this with the other tools. No names mentioned, but I have tried this with some of the other tools. Not a lot of success. I've had them where I've done it like 3 or 4 times. It says learn successful with the other tools. Didn't work. Came on here with the AutoLogic, and one press of the button, everything worked fine. But this is what we're looking for. These are the kind of things. This vehicle will start and run terribly poor in the beginning, which I can't really show you guys that apparently. But she shakes up a storm. When we go into our diagnostic requests again and we look at our angles, still on that Valvetronic, 0 and 230. You'll notice it never changes. We have no change whatsoever to that number. And that's because our eccentric shaft sensor, and this one has definitely failed. It's a $440 sensor, so or around that, or around about. That is a big call to make. That's something that we have to make sure that we're using the correct tooling and the correct testing procedures to really make sure before you make that call. Pulling that valve cover on this car, not easy to do. I believe Mike Salazar actually made a video also showing that. So if you guys aren't aware of what's involved with that, it's you know, it's a much bigger job than it seems in the beginning. So it's probably not for the do-it-yourselfer. Obviously the tools that are here, you know, these are professional grade tools. You know, it's something that unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately. Yes, we are kind of, they kind of force our hand into buying them, but at least we have them made available to us. I actually prefer this tool over the BMW tool. The BMW tool references back to some service information that I could find anyway, but it's a lot easier to use. I mean, these menus make it much easier for me to sit there and hop back in and out of what I want to do. Having a button that just says service functions and pops me right in, I mean, you know, that's golden for me. Get in and out, make the tests, and then do it from there. So you'll probably see this again though, because I have next to us over here another X Drive over there, and back there is another one that you can't see, and the Mercedes that's right next to us over here. So a lot of European today. AutoLogic is going to definitely get a workout.